Ladies and gentlemen, it's Thursday. You know what that means? It's welcome to the Art Fight Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Nolan. I'm here with Brian Siskin. Brian, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, sir. How are you today?
Good. That was a very professional introduction. I'm feeling very
Yeah.
professional. I'm sitting up straight. I'm having a pretty good day.
Yeah. Well, it's exciting times. No matter what you're into, it's whatever it is, man. It's going on.
If you like chaos, welcome to 2020. Anyway, yeah, so it's just you and me here at this moment. I'm actually literally just now getting a message from our guest, and I'll tell you what this says. Last week, we announced that we were going to have Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship boxer, fighter, all-around gentleman of violence, Tom Schoff, on the show. And Tom is in the process of joining us in a minute. He got held up a little bit, but he's supposed to be on the show today. He was very cool about getting rescheduled for this week, so I'm sure Tom will be on with us soon. But we went ahead and just started the show. We're going to try to pull him on as soon as he is able to click through. I'm wondering if he just was about to message me and saw my last message, which was just reinforcing how to click through to get onto the platform. But anyway, so I can't wait to have Tom on here. Before we talk too much about Tom, let's wait for him to get on here. But you and I were just talking a little bit about some of the stuff that's going on this weekend. There's a UFC fight with Figueiredo and Shevchenko are both fighting. And what's this?
Also, I think that actually this weekend is a good, like, if you're somebody that's just a little curious about MMA because you listen.
He's saying it won't. Go ahead and talk. I'm going to try to do something.
Yeah. So I was just gonna say that I think that the card this weekend, it doesn't have the promise of some sort of insane implications, right? Like, it's not like the biggest fight card in the world, but there's some very, very good fighters on it, and the makeup of the card itself it's a good, I think it's just going to be good quality mixed martial arts to watch. And I think that especially anybody that's curious about maybe tuning in for the first time or something, I really think that, watching Shevchenko, Valentina Shevchenko do her thing is a great sort of entree into the whole thing, because it's about as technically beautiful as anything you're going to see. It's as fine art as anything you can see.
I agree. I think she's fantastic. And we were just talking about the fact that, when you have fighters who are primarily counterpunchers, they sort of rely on the aggression of their opponent. So sometimes Shevchenko's fights can be less than action-packed, but often they are action-packed. And often, even when they are less than action-packed, she ultimately is able to pull something exciting out of the bag. And her last fight was not necessarily the most exciting fight of the year, but she ended it very suddenly with a flare of drama that I'm glad I caught live. So if you like seeing people be, suddenly knocked unconscious by 2x4 head kicks, this might be something for you. Another thing that's going on this week, this is the Art Fight Podcast, Brian. I don't know how much you're aware of this, but we like to talk. We like to blend those together sometimes. We like to sort of mix it all up together.
Yeah.
And this week, you actually just informed me of this. I know that this premiered last week, 36 Chambers, which is RZA from Wu-Tang Clan. That's essentially like his brand. He does clothes and all sorts of different projects under the 36 Chambers banner. And he's been hosting movies that are basically films that they're showing, and then there's always a commentary with RZA and other guests, or just other guests. I mean, a lot of people have been jumping on there to take over and show these old kung fu movies and stuff. Mostly these are movies that RZA has had some kind of a musical connection with, like movies he's borrowed samples from or movies he's done soundtracks for. This last week, Jim Jarmusch did a commentary for Ghost Dog, which is a movie that RZA did the soundtrack for, and that soundtrack just recently came out on vinyl. Brian just got that in the mail. He can tell you all about what an amazing package this limited edition vinyl is. But this week they're going to replay the Ghost Dog film on the 36 Chambers platform, and this time RZA is going to do the commentary, which I think would be fascinating. So if you haven't seen Ghost Dog, this is a great opportunity to watch a great movie and hear a great soundtrack.
You know what I think about when I think of
Tom's having trouble getting through. He tried it on his phone and he tried it on his thing. Do you have any advice for him?
Does he have the latest link
I just sent him the one you just sent me.
Okay.
You sent me the same link twice. Am I right?
Yeah.
I just resent him the one you sent me.
Yeah.
The second one you sent me. So.
It's a live show, and for the recorded folks,
he's got the first one and the second one.
Yeah, sorry about this, everyone. This is
Uh,
what happens when you do things on the internet.
yeah, weird. We almost never have any trouble with this. Let me think here. Do do do.
While you're pondering that, I just wanted to say that one of the things that we'll just kind of keep it going about Ghost Dog here for a second, because
Okay, yeah,
it's
that's
really
fine.
worth talking about before we kind of move on. But and we'll get Tom figured out. He'll get to. I mean, it's really click the link. You know what I mean? But anyway, yeah. So as far as Ghost Dog goes, I think that I've never seen such a powerful combination of soundtrack and movie together in a way that that movie worked, and especially like at the time, it just really in the the 90s. God bless the 90s. But it was, I think, the last also of truly sublime mass marketed film on some level, like bigger, big name. It wasn't fully like an underground. I mean, people call it a cult classic, but I mean, it was. I mean, Forrest Whitaker stars in it. It's not like a bunch of randos. So anyway, there's just something about the way that the timing and the pace and the dialogue and the way that they weave humor and, like you were saying earlier, like a sort of the urban, the concept of sort of the urban samurai in a really pure form is just a cool thing, and
Mhm.
also I love a protagonist that's where it's conflicted, right? Like he's an assassin,
Mhm.
so
Yeah, it's cool. It's that's what's great about it is it's again for people who might not have seen this film, it's a it's a movie about a hitman living in New York in the 90s, I guess is when that movie was made. Is that correct?
yeah.
And there's like mobsters involved and all this stuff. So it has all the trappings of a gangster milieu, but the story is told from the point of view, or from the with the sort of with the aesthetics of a samurai film. And like
Mhm.
this guy who's a hitman, he has a code of honor and he works for a specific mob boss. So that's like his shogun or whatever, or like his emperor kind of thing. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And he is and like Brian said, he's a good guy in the sense that he has a
He lives by a code.
he lives by a code of right and wrong, and it's not the code of society necessarily, but it's his, and it's and the way all the pieces of this movie fit together, it just ends up being a really, even though all these things we're talking about, gangster films, samurai movies, all this stuff is been done, but he puts it together in this really interesting way, this interesting Jarmushian sort of
Mhm.
quiet,
Yeah.
quirky character, dialogue driven story, and it's fascinating, and the soundtrack is incredible, and
Yeah,
it goes so well with it.
and it's like but like I was saying, it's sort of the end of it. To me, it marks the time of the end of movies that were not in a hurry.
Mm.
I feel like it's sort of to me, it was sort of I think that's something that really was we've talked about 70s cinema a lot, but
Mm.
to me, like, that was the peak of, like, we'll get there when we get there, and
Yeah.
it can be a little bit richer and longer pause and
Mhm.
shots and just more sublime. So, you know, but I'll never forget, when I saw that movie for the first time, I very rarely in my life can I just point to moments where it was like, oh, that was a really pivotal movie. So, but yeah, and it's all samurais and gangsters, but it's also so delicate and innocent, and poetic. It's a great thing. So yeah, Saturday Night 36 Chambers, certainly worth doing. I mean, I'm also like really all about people that are trying to really push, during this time, and for them to charge, $10, but you don't even have to leave your house, and you can go essentially sit in a virtual theater. They've created a sort of an experience. It's not just like log into some
Oh, okay.
other stream or something. They've really gone the extra mile to sort of create something. So it's cool. These are people that have always been inventive. So the spirit of it is just very cool. And I'm not, I was talking to a friend of mine earlier, and she said something about, I had mentioned this movie, and she said, "Oh, that old movie," and I was like, "Oh shit." So that means
Um,
it was
is
like what?
is there any chance that Tom is here and you're not seeing it? It looks like he's going to click this join button and he's going to be here in just a second.
Okay.
He literally just sent me a photo capture and I could see the join button. So he'll get this. He'll be on here in just a second.
Okay.
Yeah. I had the same problem earlier today and I've done this a bunch of times. So
yeah, I guess I've just never done the whole, since I'm sort of driving all this stuff, I don't ever have the joy of just clicking into it and seeing what that user experience is like for you. Hopefully it's not too confusing. It seems like it's pretty straight ahead, but you know, anything that's trying to be able to be done on all platforms can be always interesting. But yeah, so otherwise, we're heading for this time now where it's like we're going into this kind of darkness, this sort of dark period. So we're just trying to make the most of it.
Hold on a second. Okay, he says he lost connection with the host. So I'm going to email him a link. I just now got an email for him. Me and Tom have been doing all this via social media, but now I've got the email, so I can forward your link to him through that. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is how you do it. Money for nothing, chicks for free.
Well, you know what? At least we're on a platform now that allows for this to be done, because when we had our previous setup, this would not be possible. So we are thankful to our partners at Restream for giving us this wonderful interface. I guess I'll be doing a lot of. I don't ever edit our podcasts or anything. We never edit anything, but I might cut this out for the.
We don't edit.
Everybody's audio.
No,
anyway,
this is gold. This is almost as good as the budget monitor discussion we had last week. I actually ordered some monitors. I didn't get the ones we talked about. I got a different set, but
of course you did.
That discussion really helped guide me toward my final choice. So,
all right, have you got them yet?
No, I have not gotten. I'm going to get them tomorrow. Today I got my replacement MIDI controller though, which I'm very excited about.
Well,
if anybody out there is trying to make any significant music purchases and you're looking for a good deal and you don't want to go to a store and you just want something to come to your door,
look at this.
I must recommend.
Hey,
yeah, all right. I knew we could do it. I knew we could do it. I knew we could do it.
Hey, usually Tom, we meet people in sort of this little virtual green room and we say hi before we go live. But right now we're live. So what's up, man?
Yeah, man.
Well, just throw me in the fire. Let's go. How's everybody doing today?
Yeah,
doing great,
man. Well, okay, here we go. So, Tom, it's great to talk to you. I'm really glad we finally got you on the show. It took us a second there, but I appreciate your patience and I appreciate you sticking with us to come on today. I just wanted to give a little background. I don't know how much you know about the podcast, but the Art Fight podcast, we talk to an audience that's really into combat sports, especially MMA, but we also speak to an audience that's really into like painting and dance and filmmaking and things like that. So I want to get into some stuff that the fight fans are going to want to, show up for today, but I also want to get some basics covered for the novices who don't know any better. But to just start off with, I'm aware of you because of your recent fights with the Bare Knuckle Fighting. What's Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. I'm sorry, I kept on thinking
it always ends in championship.
It always ends in championship. Yeah. So with the BKFC is how I normally think about it. And I recently saw on your Instagram, which everybody should be following, by the way. I recently saw on your Instagram that you took a photo of yourself and you were wearing a gi and you were just getting done with the jiu-jitsu practice. And I was like, oh, man, Tom's doing jiu-jitsu. And then I looked and I realized that I didn't know hardly anything about all the fights you've done, because before this recent handful of fights you did with the BKFC, you've already done a number of MMA fights and you have an MMA fight coming up in January.
Yeah. All of that is 100% accurate. I've been spending the last couple of years. So to kind of start from the beginning, I started fighting probably 10 or 12 years ago. And I started with MMA. I had a pretty extensive amateur career. And then I went pro. And as soon as I went pro, I started to notice some glaring weaknesses in my game. So I took some time off. fixed those holes, had a long stretch of a career, and then fixed some more holes. And then as of recently, I've kind of been in the point, because I'm 11-4. So I've got 15 professional fights in MMA. And that's a really tricky record, because I have a lot of experience, but I don't necessarily have a lot of high level experience. So what I really needed to do was just get better, was to kind of take a step back, really focus on my grappling, really focus on my wrestling, because my striking's good. My striking is what got me where I was, but everything else had to catch up. So I figured I would stay active with my fighting by going to bare knuckle and focusing on my jiu-jitsu and my training. So for the last 3 years, I've been focusing on my wrestling and my grappling outside of my fights. And that's kind of where I've been at as far as my MMA career. I decided to come back to MMA because I feel like I'm ready. I think I'm pretty close to my black belt now. I've got 3 stripes on my brown, and I'm winning, you know. So what's that?
When you say you're pretty close to your black belt, you've already got 3 stripes on your brown. You're talking about your jiu-jitsu belt, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Again, for our novice listeners who don't know the rankings.
Yeah. So you need 4 stripes to get qualified for your black, and I've got 3. So we'll see where the next year plays out. But I feel like I'm ready to come back. I'm 32 years old. Well, almost 32 years old. And my time's running out. So I want to get back in the MMA game. I want to start where I left off, so to speak, you know, pick up where I left off and kind of go from there. So that's a little bit of Tom's background.
Hey, Tom, I'm Brian, by the way, and that's Joe, just so you don't have us mixed up. But I want this is kind of like we talk about all kinds of shit here, and we think things will get weird sometimes. But I kind of wanted just to go right to sort of a dark place.
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm curious about is something I find fascinating is that in every other craft, right? Like if you're a musician or an artist of some kind, you have some trajectory of the entirety of your life that you feel like you can utilize to do sort of your masterpiece or your life's work. But there's, you know, something about, athletics in general, and obviously specifically, you know, with fighting, although some people don't realize they should sunset their careers, but ultimately, I find it really interesting that you're training and correcting and fixing and changing modes, right, by different types of rule sets, different promotions. I mean, you're still sort of in this sort of constant flux and state of improvement because you have to be. But but within the context of like when you say like, you know, I'm 31, 32, you know, there's only so much more of this that I should realistically do. You know, I can't imagine what it would feel like as an artist, a producer, musician, filmmaker, whatever, to be like, I've got maybe a good 5 years left where I can do, you know what I mean? What I love to do the most and brings me the most happiness. How do you reconcile that?
Well, I think that the only way that I really can reconcile it is it's nature, you know, like the human body can only do so much for so long. And as a male, I reach my physical peak and prime between 34 and 38. So I've only got so much time to get as good as possible without absolutely destroying my body, and then utilizing those 4 years of my peak or my prime to do the best that I can do in this sport. So I think as far as reconciliation goes, it's just understanding that human nature has provided me with a time frame, and I've only got so long to get my goals accomplished. There's really no ifs, ands, or buts. You know, there's really no other way around it. You know, if it was something a little more with a little more leniency or a little more leeway, I'd be like, you know, dang, but like you can't fight human nature, you know?
Yeah, I understand. Like, do not resist the imminent, because that's pretty a futile thing to do. But you're very quick, and it's easy to overlook how quickly it is, or how hard it is, and how quickly you accept that, and just that's the framework through which you operate. You know what I mean? Because I think a lot of people operate in various levels of kind of resistance towards that. So I just thought that's an interesting sort of point of view and like a place where you are, especially, you know, switching gears, you know, between bare knuckle.
I feel like I've always been sort of a long-term thinker, so to speak. So anytime I'm thrown in a situation or I'm put into a scenario, I never think of, okay, what's going to happen right now? You know, it's like, all right, so I make this decision and this is the consequence of this decision now. And then the consequence from now, and then the consequence a month from now. And, you know, I have to look at that time period. So when I made the commitment to this sport and to this career, I had to look at it like that. I had to look at it realistically, like, okay, like, Tom, you're going to fight for a living, but unless you make a tremendous amount of money, you're not going to retire off of fighting. Mm-hmm. So you need to look at that realistic time frame, and then you need to look at what you're going to do after that. So that's kind of always just been my mentality. You know, I've always had that in the back of my head, and I think it's benefited me because a lot of people don't have that long-term thought process. A lot of people don't understand that longevity is key in this sport. And if you ruin your body before you even get to the point where you can perform at its peak, you've done yourself a disservice. So I just try to keep that in mind. I'm always trying to be one step ahead of myself in that sense.
I think, you know, recently, especially, it seems like in the last 5 years, I've heard more and more of this when it comes to just getting the behind the scenes understanding of these different training camps, different fighters are going through and what they're doing. And I know in a lot of the books that I've read about Muhammad Ali, there's more than one book I've read about Muhammad Ali where they talked about the fact that that as much as he took punishment in the fights that he had, he also, especially later in his career, had this way of sparring where he would let himself get hit a lot in sparring. And a lot of people around Muhammad Ali said that's where he ultimately got hurt. That's what ultimately did the damage to him and, you know, affected his ability to speak and all this kind of stuff. And in MMA, we see more and more fighters and coaches saying, you know, the sparring is the thing that you know, is the danger zone here. These fights are bad, you know, getting a knockout or something like that, it can be, you know, damaging to a fighter, but it's what's happening in the gyms day after day, month after month, week after week, training camp after training camp. That's the real wear and tear. So like for you, like, how are you training and what are you doing to like, you know, develop these skills you need to meet this physical peak you're heading toward right now, and, you know, be the best fighter you can be when you've got all of the, you know, all of your you know, physicality and everything behind it. But how are you doing your training to sort of maximize all that without taking that damage?
Well, I was, depending on how you look at this, I was either fortunate or unfortunate to learn that lesson early. I had a lot of training partners in my early days, and we were all young and hungry, and we would just beat the life out of each other. And I would wake up with shakes. Still to this day, I'll swallow the end of my words. I'll mix words up, things like that. And this was at, you know, 23, 24. So I was noticing the stuff really early. So I really pulled away from it. And I've taken that in stride now as I've gotten older. And basically I reserve my sparring to a maximum of once a week. I usually spar on Sundays. And it's always with, you know, 16-ounce gloves. If I'm wearing MMA gloves or smaller gloves, we're wearing headgear. And that's mainly for cuts. It's not so much for concussive damage because headgear doesn't really help for concussive damage, but it does prevent help prevent cuts. And I don't abuse my body outside of that. You know, I train and I do things that are abusive to my body, but it also helps make me stronger. I lift weights fairly consistently now. I'm always in the gym. I'm literally in the gym every day. There's rarely a day that I'm not in the gym. But it's all intelligent. If I beat the hell out of my body yesterday, I'm not going to do it again today. I'm going to be technical. I'm going to be smooth. I'm going to work to my body's ability without overdoing it. And I think that's just something that we learn in time. You know, we learn what we're capable of and what we're not capable of. We learn how hard we can push ourselves and keep going and still be strong. And when we need to taper back a little bit and, you know, give ourselves a couple of days, but if I could answer this question in one failed swoop, it would be it's just a learning curve. The more you do it and the more you understand about it, the more you know what your body can take and what it can't. And I learned at a very young age that I was doing too much to my body, and now I try to be as smart as possible with it. Like I said, I reserve my sparring to once a week. After my fights, I don't get on the mats for 6 weeks. Like my last fight, I didn't take a lot of damage in my last fight at all. I still haven't sparred. I've sparred one time since that last fight. fight, and that was last week, or I'd say just, Sunday, so 5 days ago. Just because when your body goes through that, it needs time to heal and recover. So again, to pull this thing full circle, it's just time and experience. I've been doing this for long enough that I know how to push myself and how hard I can push myself without overdoing.
I've always thought like there's some strange phenomena there, right? Like it's universal, whether you're a drummer or whatever, like where if you watch a musician that's that's honed their craft, they've got economy of movement and technique. Like they are not wasting synapses or energy, and it's very focused. And it's the same thing I would imagine for combat sports, right? Like you can achieve exactly the same thing, if not more, just by having a little bit of like a kind of a piece that you're coming from. But I think about, though, at the same time, when you're talking about like sort of staying, like taking time out, not sparring as much and all that, I wonder about. I mean, people, I hate this conversation more than anything. Just because I'm saying the word ring rust does not mean I'm talking about it, but just as a point of reference, ring rust.
People talk about that sometimes.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of very Robin Black about that particular one. Like, it's like, okay, this is really like the resolution in which we're going to talk about this. Like, it's not just as simple as like, because for instance, like I always had this kind of funny thought in my head, like what if NFL teams could have like one person legally on their team that has maybe never played football in their life. Mm-hmm. And then if you ever are in a position where it's like the Super Bowl and like you're down and you've got to get somebody to run a kickback all the way, and you just bring that person in and have somebody catch the ball and hand it to them in the same way that like moms will lift cars to save babies, like that's sort of like superhuman adrenaline thing. Like the guy's tendons would be flying out, but he would not get hit by any of these people. You know what I mean? Like I
appreciate that. It's like that beginner's luck, when you get somebody who's never fought a day in their life, and then you throw them in the ring and they're piecing people up. Like, it happens. You get guys who get off the court and they're all over the place.
Yeah. So for the record, I am not saying that this is remotely a sound modality of thinking, but I guess just as a point of example, I feel like if you're laying off of it, I wonder if it does create just a sample of that sort of urgency when you're in the cage, when you haven't been over sparring and all that, to where it's like, this is a real fight right now. This is a real fight right now. I've never done it, so I don't know, but I just speculate. I wonder.
Yeah. I would say that's a really good way of putting it. And if I'm doing my job properly in training camp, the work that I do in the gym and the work that I do in the cage on fight night are one and the same. Mm-hmm. There's no difference in emotion, in expectation, in practice versus reality. They should be synonymous with each other. But that's only if you're doing things properly. If you don't train properly, if you are not as mentally prepared and focused as you can be, as confident in your preparations as you can be, you're going to go in there with, oh, I forgot about this, or, oh, what if he does this, or, oh, what if this happens? Mm-hmm. And then that creates doubt. And when doubt comes into play, then it's a real fight. Then it's like, oh no, there are serious consequences here. Mm-hmm. But when your confidence is through the roof because you've done all the work, it's just another day in practice.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's really interesting, man. I love your insights there. We definitely are happy to speak with you and to speak to fighters like you who are willing to like dive this deep into like what they're doing in terms of how they train and how they, anxieties they might have or issues they're thinking about or their long-term goals and all that stuff. So I really appreciate all these insights you're giving us, Tom. And another thing that I think is interesting about you, and another reason why I wanted to get you on the show, isn't just the fighting thing, which is obviously the core of what you're doing and the core of what all your peers are doing as well, and what we talk about on the show. And there's another thing, there's an it factor thing that plays into the career beyond the actual fighting record and things like that. And you, to me, are someone who really stands out at the BKFC. The BKFC is a relatively young organization. There are if I'm now, tell me if I'm right about this real quick. They are the first bare knuckle fighting organization in America that was able to sort of like, that was outlawed for a long time. And they were the people who broke the ice here in the States and were able to sort of make it into an organized sport again. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it has been underground for a long time. Florida has been underground.
Nobody stopped doing it, by the way, but they just
like Kimbo Slice and Dada 5000 and that Mighty Mouse character. Like, it's been around for a while, but yes, the BKFC was the first legitimate organization to bring sanctioned bare knuckle fighting back to the United States since 1887, I think. I'm pretty sure that the show that they did in Cheyenne, Wyoming was the first show in like 131 years or 133 years, something like that. So yeah, they were the first organization to bring it back as a sanctioned legal sport in the United States in over 100 years.
I saw you once explain it somewhere. I heard you explain it where you were like, okay, you know, like the meme that goes around on the internet. You explain
Yep, this one.
Like, right. And it says whatever bullshit. That's the guy. Yeah,
that's the guy.
That's how it all got famous.
yeah. And I think the thing with it is like that sport. I mean, to some degree, it's recently gotten a lot of shine because of fighters from the UFC who've gone over there. Jason Knight and Artem Lobov had a great fight. Paulie Malignaggi came out of retirement, a well-known pro boxer, a former champion pro boxer, came out of retirement to fight a UFC guy there. So it seems like a lot of these other, other sports and also other, organizations have sort of lent their, somewhat high profile, faces to the bare knuckle fighting world. And that's helped to get a lot of attention on bare knuckle fighting. But for me, Tom, you are the guy who has sort of come out of bare knuckle fighting and sort of made a name for yourself as a persona above and beyond just what you've been able to do in the ring. To me, you're the guy that I've noticed just as a character, essentially, and I wondered, like, how much do you think about and how important is it? And what part of your whole plan has to do with
Joe? He's just being him, man. He's just being himself.
I don't think you're being disingenuous by any means, but I really do think that you have a certain persona that transcends, to me, you're like a Donald Cerrone or like one of the Diaz brothers. I mean, you're like one of these guys who it's like if Tom Schoff is fighting, there's Tom Schoff people who want to see Tom Schoff fight, win, lose, or draw. We know it's going to be a great fight. We want to see you do your thing. And it doesn't matter what your rank is. It doesn't matter if you're winning or losing. None of that's really important. It's a Tom Schoff fight. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Like that's very kind of you to say. And I really appreciate that. It's as far as like me fighting goes and like my fight style, I just like to fight, like that's the long of it. I have that like gladiator mentality, that like, for the love of the crowd mentality. So anytime I fight, I think that's why my fans like watching me fight so much, is because I don't go out and try to score points. I don't go out and try to win the judge's decision. Like, I'm trying to hit you as many times as possible as I can before the ref stops the fight or before the fight's over. That's my whole goal. And I think that me being honest and true to that, it has been what stood out from me out of everybody else. Because I'm not scared to get in the thick of it. I'm not scared to go out there and fight. And I love what I do, and people see that while I'm performing. And I think that's the second part of being a professional fighter. I think that being a professional fighter is obviously about fighting. It's about being a good athlete and being a good performer in doing the job well. But part of the job is being a performer. Part of the job is putting on a show. I dance to my walkout songs. I sing a lot of my walkout songs. Like, I get jazzed up and I move. I wear different outfits and things like that. Like, I put on a show. I perform. And I think that's probably what's made me stand out over everybody else, is on top of the fact that I put on great fights. I'm a genuine person when we're having these one-on-ones or these conversations, and I perform. I really don't know what else to say outside of thank you, for noticing. Because it really does. I really do have a lot of appreciation for people who show up just to see me. I think that, to quote Donald Cerrone, Donald Cerrone said that the BKFC is where fighters go to die. And he said that the night that Leonard Garcia fought Julian Lane, which I thought was kind of fucked up because he was there to support Leonard Garcia. But anyway, moral of the story is he said that the BKFC is where fighters go to die. And I kind of took that personally, my career's not over by any means. I don't see me retiring soon in any stretch of the imagination. So for me to go into BKFC and to be bigger in a sense than I was before, because BKFC is not bigger than the UFC. So guys like Jason Knight and Artem and the heavyweights that came over, Silva and
oh, that's right, yeah,
Gonzaga, all those guys, like they've all been in bigger places, and they're kind of taking a step back if you want to look at it in that sense. I don't have that goal. That's not my intention. I would love to be a champion for bare knuckle. I would love to be the 155-pound champion, but that doesn't mean that that's where I'm going to stop. I'm going back to MMA. Me and my coach have talked about me going to gloved boxing. I'm still competing in jiu-jitsu. I have no goal and intent in dying in the BKFC, to quote Donald Cerrone. So I take a lot of pride, and I have a lot of appreciation when people tell me that I've grown since I've been there, or that people will tune in just to see me fight because I'm on the card. Like, that makes me feel good. That proves to me that what I've done for the last 12 years hasn't been for naught. It goes a long way.
Well, to me, I appreciate the fact that you just used the word perform like 5 or 6 times, because that's something that Brian and I, when we first started this podcast, that was what we were always, Brian and I are both musician, arts type people here in Nashville. I've got a bit more of a background in actually practicing some martial arts, although I've never been a competitor. Brian and I would end up at like a concert or at like a gallery or something like that on a Saturday night, probably on a Friday night, because if it was a Saturday night, we were probably at home watching fights, right? But on a Friday night, we would run into each other and we'd be talking about this weird, video installation or this strange music we were hearing. But then inevitably we'd be like, did you see that head kick last week? Like, that was incredible. And so, it's one of those things where I feel like we, can you guys still see me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't see your little photos up here, so I thought maybe I lost you. He was like, do whatever you're doing, Brian. Anyway,
speaking to the void as if we're not
here. Okay, yeah, I'll just keep going. Just trust it, Joe. But I feel like we, Brian and I always would look at these fights and see these things, and we would always see the artistry in them, not only in the technical skill and all that stuff, but something honestly that I always find so wanting in the UFC, the showmanship and the characters and the pomp and circumstance and all that kind of stuff. And I definitely, I appreciate the fact that you really emphasize the performances that you put on, not only in the fights themselves, but before the fights and after the fights, and the sort of artistic aspect that you bring to it. That's exactly what I'm trying to highlight and point out, and I think is a big part of what you do. But in this whole talk we're having right now, you're also talking about all of this the way a martial artist talks about it. And that's the difference to me also with you and fighters like you is, some people are really like, they are prize fighters, and obviously you're a prize fighter as well. But there's some people we talked to on this show, and you're now in that club because we just talked for 5 minutes about this whole thing. But you're speaking about this as a martial artist evolving through your craft. And to me, I think your move to bare knuckle was incredibly smart, because you obviously have a much bigger spotlight than you had before as an MMA fighter. And when you get back, into the cage to do an MMA fight, I can't wait to see that now. You know what I mean?
Also that kind of makes it what's interesting, right? Is the idea of people traversing these different modes of fighting.
I love it.
And so it's like an astronaut re-entering the atmosphere each time. It's like, I don't know, like the tiles may burn up, or it may be just like incredible, and we'll see in Houston. I have no idea.
Yeah, 100%.
I think there's an interesting thing where, Cerrone's, sort of from an earlier generation in a way in terms of the arc of his career. And I feel like, when I think about what you're doing right now, and I think about what fighters like, younger fighters like Sean O'Malley and people like this are doing, it's like we live in a different world now. We live in a world where there is bare knuckle fighting on television. We live in a world where boxing is exciting again. We live in a world where we have MMA fights with a few different organizations on multiple platforms and stuff like this. So and not to mention all the grappling and everything else that's out there. So to me, it's like when I see these fighters who like, oh, I had a fight in the UFC, but then I went and did this grappling tournament, and then I'm going to do a no-gi thing next month, and then I'm going to go do this and that. To me, I mean, there's interesting ways to move around in the world of combat sports right now. That to me, I mean, it's like the new way to do it in a way, as opposed to like, oh, I got in with a promotion and I, had a run and I became a champion and defended my belt and It's like, that's kind of like the way that like I used to, like, I'd go to work for Ford and 30 years later, they'd give me a watch and I'd retire. You know what I mean? It's not really like that anymore anywhere in a way.
Right. We're independent contractors. That's the long and the short of it, So if I want to go work for BKFC and then go work for the UFC, God willing, go work for whoever else, I'm allowed that ability. I'm an independent contractor. I'm not, at this point, I'm not contracted under anybody. But to get back to one of the things that you touched on earlier, I think that the UFC I think traditional martial artists were saying the same thing that Donald Cerrone's saying today, 25 years ago. Like, that's where competitors go to die, human cockfighting, so on and so forth. It was so, it was so outlandish 25 years ago. And then, it's become the new swing of things. It's the most mainstream sport in the world right now. I think that when I made the step over to bare knuckle, I kind of had that foresight, was that this could be the sport that's the next UFC. This could be the next big thing in combat sports. And why not be there when history's made? I was at the first show. I fought on the 2nd, 4th, and 6th show. And then again on the 9th, I think, or the 11th. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It was after that. But moral of the story, I've been with this company since it started. I've been with this company. I was at the first show and I fought on the 2nd show, and I've been with them ever since. And to be a part of history and to not go there and die, to go there and make a bigger name and then step off to another program and take that following with me elsewhere, and now have, the following that I have on Instagram and things like that, where people who only know me from bare knuckle are, oh, this guy does jujitsu. This guy's, like, he's an MMA fighter too. It just, it helps me as an entertainer, as a persona, grow and expand and do more things with the gifts that I've been given. And I can't really do anything but thank the BKFC for that. If they hadn't done the things that they had done over the last 10 years to get everything sanctioned and regulated, I wouldn't be able to do the things that I'm doing now to make my name known, So,
well, we have a friend of the show, Jeff Coffin, and he's a saxophone player. He plays with this little startup band called Dave Matthews Band, and they're starting to get pretty big, I think.
I think I've heard 1 or 2 songs.
Yeah, I've never. All respect to my friend Jeff. I've never voluntarily listened to a Dave Matthews Band song, but I have appreciated when he's invited me out to a show, and that's great. But no, he's a dear old friend and collaborator and all that. But I think about it, reminds me of him in a way where it's like, he's playing on the biggest stages, on the biggest tours, in the top grossing concert act, and on the biggest stage. All that said, when he comes back to Nashville, he is, having sessions in his garage. He's playing little local jazz shows. He is constant, and he's teaching. He's doing clinic. Like he is doing all of these things that are, most people I feel like would be in a place where they'd be very comfortable to say, I have plenty of income. I play for one of the biggest bands in the world. I know all the songs and, like I'm good. This is great, but just it's really inspiring to see how hard he works when people aren't really noticing, or very small concentrated efforts, or what he does to help people, or all of that. So when you're talking about sort of moving through different promotions and all that too, it's like, it's really only, to me, seemingly like a reflection of your internal quest, right? These are just manifestations of it, but ultimately it's like you're not doing this stuff only to have transferable notoriety across promotions. You're doing it because it's richly and actually your interest and your pursuit. It just so happens that there's a way to sort of have this kind of way to perpetuate it and have it be symbiotic or continue, because you are marketing, or you are, being a little outward with your persona, but it's not inauthentic. And I think that it's the same as like shit talk or anything else, right? Where it's like when people are faking it, it's just kind of painful to sort of witness.
Yeah, it's just gross. It's like, come on, man. Like, who are you trying to convince, me or you? But to touch on that, what I really liked about that analogy is that, like, Jeff, right? That was his name.
Yeah. Jeff Coffin.
So Jeff, he's one of the best saxophone players in the world, playing for one of the best bands in the world. And he goes home when he's not on tour, and what does he do? He hones his craft. Mm-hmm. He's not just playing his saxophone day in and day out, but he's teaching. He's working with students. He's helping people out. All of these little things are all helping build his community, but also helping him hone his craft and helping him get better at what he does and further understand his understanding of what he does. It's very similar to what I'm doing when I'm just grabbing different parts of the combat sports world. I started this adventure in MMA. I planned on finishing this adventure in MMA. Mm-hmm. So why not do a little boxing? Why not do a little jiu-jitsu? Why not do, all I'm doing is honing my craft. I'm just getting better at what I do day in and day out. And like I said, I spend every day in the gym. When I'm not training, I'm teaching. When I'm not teaching, I'm doing private lessons. When I'm not doing private lessons, I'm doing strength and conditioning programs and helping people with meal plans and stuff like that. Like, everything that I do that isn't directly fight related directly helps my fight related game. And I think that that's very similar to what your friend Jeff is doing. Is he's not just practicing 24/7, but everything he does helps mold his craft and helps make him better. I think all artists do that, or at least they should.
Well, one thing we talk about when we've had artists on here who are, professors or art instructors of some kind, is inevitably we want to ask them, like, more specifically, like, what does teaching do for you? When you say that you're teaching, are you teaching jujitsu? Are you doing pads with students? Like, what kind of teaching do you do? And how does that actually give you insights, like, more specifically?
Okay, so throw some analogies out there for you.
I love analogies.
If I say to you, 2 + 2 is 4, and you say back to me, 2 + 2 is 4, the only thing that you know is the equation. You don't know what 2 is. You don't know what plus is. You don't know what 4 is. You don't know any of that. You can say so. The moral of the story is you can learn something without knowing something. And what I really feel like teaching does is it forces me to know what I'm doing. I can tell you to throw a jab, and if I don't tell you when to throw the jab, why to throw the jab, how to throw the jab, and how to execute that jab properly, I don't know why I'm telling you to throw the jab. I know just as much as you do. So when I teach and when I instruct, it forces me to digest and understand what it is that I'm trying to portray or get across to people. And if you can't teach it, especially if you can't teach it to a child, you shouldn't be teaching it to anybody, in my opinion. And I feel like that's why a lot of jiu-jitsu players are instructors earlier in their game. You get a lot of white belts teaching kids, a lot of blue belts teaching kids, and a lot of purple belts teaching kids, because it forces you to understand the simplicity of the sport, but it also forces you to truly know what it is that you're teaching and be able to teach it to somebody in such a plain and blatant way that even a child can get it. So to answer this question in full circle again, what I think teaching does for me is it forces me to truly understand my craft and my sport. That's what teaching does for me, and that's the benefit that I get out of having that in my life on a daily basis.
There's no faster way to sort of feel exposed, right, than to be in a position of the purveyor of some knowledge, and then it becomes like a question of kind of your own integrity, right? Because you're like, I can do like a lot of my high school teachers did, and clearly phoned it in with a bunch of bullshit just to collect a paycheck. Shout out to my high school teachers. The other half, who I liked more, seemed to have a grasp of what they were talking about, and you can really feel it, right? And I think that actually helps with the transfer of knowledge. Is, you know, when somebody really knows something, they're sort of teeming with and kind of emanating the wisdom, kind of energy or whatever it is, you know, that it just makes it easier. It makes you more subconsciously able to accept their knowledge as just what it is, not challenging it as much, because it just resonates. It's confidence. Probably like it's like like when you figure out when you're young, you know, you're like, oh, if you just walk up to a girl and don't act like an idiot, right, and just say hi, how are you doing? Like, it's really not that hard, right? And but if you're acting like squeamish or weird, like, then all their primordial red alerts are going to go off, and you're probably not going to get a date. But there's something about certainty.
No date for you.
There's something about certainty, and I think that there's also like there's a difference between people that think they know everything and people that are actually resting comfortably in the actual knowing of their craft.
Yeah, you know, it goes back to the shit talking that you were talking about earlier. You know, when that's truly who somebody is, it comes off as genuine. It comes off like, you guys brought up Nick and Nate Diaz earlier. Like, when Nick and Nate go off on somebody, there's no show there. There's they're not playing to the crowd. They're not playing to the cameras. Like, whether there was nobody there or there was 1,000 people there, they're going to fuck you up. And that's genuine. They mean that. It's the same when people, that same authenticity comes out when people are teaching or instructing and they actually know what they're talking about. They know their craft, whether they're a professor out of college and they're teaching psychology, or they're teaching music, or they're teaching martial arts. When they know the craft and it's just a part of their being, you feel that when they teach, you feel that when they instruct, and it's like, this guy's good, you know. But when somebody's just faking, or like I said earlier, who are you trying to convince, me or you? You know, it's like when that persona comes up, it's like, I don't have time for this. You know, it's like you're not doing anybody any favors. So yeah, no, I would have completely agree with you on that.
Well, you've been on the podcast almost an hour, so I wanted to ask you, have you figured us out yet that we're completely full of shit?
I mean, as far as the fight game's concerned,
Joe, I'm sorry to lump you into that.
Brian's just all he's got is the feints. That's it.
That's right. I'm undefeated in feints.
That's okay. It's better to not have to hit people. I tell people.
That's true. The true master. Hey, while we still have you on the podcast, Tom, let's really quick. Let's fast forward. You know, about a little bit more than a month and a half. You are going back into the MMA cage at the end of January, on January 22nd, or on January 20th. Tell us a bit about that fight. Let us know what's going on and how people can follow it and what you're doing to get prepared. Whatever you want to talk about.
Well, perfect. Thank you. So January 30th, 2021.
January 30th. Sorry.
That's all right. January 30th, 2021. I am the main event at Rage in the Cage.
That's awesome.
78, I think. And I'm fighting Cody Pfister. Cody Pfister fought for the UFC, fought Sage Northcutt, got guillotined by Sage. He fought a couple other guys on the undercard. He fought for Bellator a handful of times. He's been fighting up in Canada recently. But he's a really tough guy. Reminds me a lot of Darren Elkins, but at like 155. And not as tough as far as like his wrestling is concerned, because I've trained with Darren and Darren's a monster. But anyway, moral of the story is that's who I'm fighting. I'm fighting Cody Pfister, January 30th, 2021 in Lawton, Oklahoma. And I'm excited for it, man. I'm ready. Like I said, it's been it'll be almost 3 years. I think my last MMA fight was February of 2018. So it'll be right about 3 years that I'll be making my comeback, and I'm excited. Like I said, I've put a lot of work in my wrestling and my jiu-jitsu. So I'm excited to show that off. I've obviously been training my hands, and these things are pretty lethal. So I'm excited to show those off as well. But that's really all Tom has coming up. You know, I work. I apprenticed to be a carpenter, so I work.
Oh wow,
5 days a week, and then after that, I go to the gym and I train. And that's the story of Tom's life. I'm trying to open up a gym here pretty soon, and I should say, me and my brother and a family friend of ours are trying to open up a gym here pretty soon. And so I've got a lot of chaos going on. But as far as what's going on in Tom and his personal life, follow me on Instagram. Right there. If you're looking at the little screen, Tom.Schoaff, that's me. I'm on Facebook. You can't miss this mug. I'm holding my mustache like that. And then, just reach out, say hello, say hi, share this video, and let everybody know that you love me and that you support me. And well, I appreciate you.
Yeah. So, and we have, is this the world record for conversations with you without bringing up the mustache mafia situation?
It might be. I mean, it might be. Yeah. But
you just ruined it.
Mafia goes, I'm still in it. Me and the mafia are still as thick as thieves, and Eddie's still training hard and making sure that I'm growing this thing out to the best of my ability, sending me waxes and creams and so on and so forth. Yeah, man, we're trying to take over as far as the mafia is concerned, but one step at a time, you know.
You know, there's been some good mafias, I think, but this is up there with the best, I think.
I am forced to agree with you on that one. It might just be because I'm a member, but you know, I'll take that bias and I'll run with it.
I feel, you know, I'm not sure that I ever hit puberty, because I'm not sure that I can even grow a mustache. So it's just a sad thing when you just know, like, I don't even have the genes to be a future part of this club or anything. Like, I can't even like be I can't even be like a fanboy on Instagram with my own thing, right? Joe, you could do it though.
I disagree. I think that you can pull it off. I just think you don't give it enough. You don't give it enough try.
Gotta lean into it.
But I will say this: if it's any consolation, this, see all that hair right there? You don't, because it doesn't fucking grow there. This is about all I get. So I can't grow a beard. I could never be part of the beard brigade. So I'll just stick with the mustache mafia, and you know, we'll take over that way.
So there's hope, and then ultimately, I don't compete or train necessarily, but I could take TRT and see what that does. So
you should do that and let me know. Maybe some TRT with psilocybin and turn into a berserker. And
wow, you just blew my mind with that thought. Like what if? So, you know, because I think a lot of people have talked. I mean, I'm not trying to go down the wormhole of performance enhancing drugs right now, but we're here. I'm just saying, like, they should just have an all steroids league for each sport and just let it get wild, right? And like, as things become cybernetic, we have like prosthetics, we have, you know, all the different sort of performance enhancing things. It becomes like a competition of innovation. Maybe some people will die, but
maybe, probably a few.
But I mean,
people are gonna take it. You know, they're gonna take that, and they're gonna want greatness.
Yeah. I think about all the possibilities there. But when you're talking about a steroid enriched, like this is something to ponder for sure. Now, but I think though that ultimately, when we always try to loop back around and finish the show with just sort of like why are we doing this, right? We talk about art and we talk about fighting. I think you're a great example of why we do that. We're so glad to have you here. And we hope that you'll be, you know, accept our invitation to be a friend of the show, and come back after and tell us about all your experience and what happens in January. Hopefully all this stuff will happen, man. Everything's so crazy. But you know, you can't live in the sort of speculation, right? You just got to go forward.
Yeah,
you know,
you got to bend with the wind and just get after it. I firmly believe that. But no, I also firmly believe in that whole manifest destiny thing. You know, you speak it into reality and things can happen. I really do hold that close to my core. So yeah, everything's going to go wonderfully in January. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to perform. Like I know I can. I'm going to get the W, and I'm going to come back on the show, and we're going to share war stories, and you guys are going to tell me what you've been up to for the last month and a half, and I'll show off my new scars.
All right.
Awesome. That's great. You're making my job easy. I already know who's coming on the show at the beginning of February.
And I will have the most faint outline of a virgin.
I bet if you start now, you have at bare minimum like what's his name from Super Troopers?
Exactly.
Mexican that offers mustache rides. I can't think of his name. Anyway, if you start now, you could probably have something pretty close to that.
All right. I appreciate it. You know, Tom, you're the only person that's ever really believed in me. So I really appreciate it, man. Because I'll tell you right now,
we're changing lives today, guys.
That's right. Because if I tell my wife, like, this is what's going on, like we're pretty much isolating together. So it's going to be, I don't even have a break during the day. I'm going to be getting sort of ridiculed every 30 minutes.
Embrace it.
It's part of the thing. Yeah. Cause I mean, like when you're rolling with a finished, you know, I mean, look at this thing. Like when you're rolling with the finished goods there, you just like, yeah, I still have like this is like a 1984 Corolla with like paint faded. You know what I mean? Like there's the promise of putting big wheels on this is not enough.
You know what I would say is the counter argument to that. Unlike a 1984 Corolla where you got to do a bunch of work to it with your face, you just got to leave it alone. Just leave it alone. It'll grow.
It's very zen. It's like if you want this dream to be realized, then you better do nothing.
Precisely. It's the opposite of being a performer.
Oh man. Well, so many gems for everybody to walk away from. So with this, thanks so much, Tom. We're gonna punch our little end card here, and then we'll see you in the green room right after. Joe, do you have anything you want to plug before we sign out?
Man, I can't think of anything to talk about other than to thank Tom. We had a little bit of technical difficulty earlier today. We had some problems last week, but I appreciate you having the patience and the desire to stick all that out with us and to come on the show. It's been a great talk. I knew it would be, and it has been. So thank you so much, Tom, for being with us. And we'll skip next week, everybody, because next week is Thanksgiving on Thursday, but we'll be back the following Thursday with Sean Sheehan from Severe MMA. And he's got a great video on YouTube where he breaks down the UFC's rules of fighting. And even if you think you know the rules, believe me, you don't know the rules. So if you want to know judges' perspective for real, check out that video and come back in 2 weeks, and we're going to have a great talk with Sean.
Super excited about that. All right. Hey, thanks again, everybody. And we will see you on the other side. Hang on one sec. Appreciate it, everybody.
Thank you, guys.